And obviously, he was on the channel today saying that he deserves attention.
Well, yeah, I think anybody who does anything on TV hears from the Ron Paul people a lot, including myself, and their complaint is that that the media is biased against him, that they don't take him seriously. I can say as a commentator, I think commentators look at it and they say, look, the reason he didn't get attention in Iowa is because we can look at it and say this isn't somebody who's going to make it out of a Republican primary because of the views that he takes on foreign policy, for example, are just not going to go over well with Republican voters. On the other hand, I think it's fair to say that he should get coverage, news coverage, but he shouldn't expect people to say that he's going to win when people think we know how primary voters operate, and that's not what they're looking for.
Charles, we know what you said about Congressman Paul and his chances. Is it fair to say that he is getting more support and attention, maybe not from the media, but from voters across the country than he has in the previous times when he's run?
Yes, I think it's true, and I think libertarianism, which is his philosophy, is behind a lot of the what happened in November of last year, the rise of the Tea Party, for example, and it's a very strong element in American conservative thought, but it is, in many ways, it's sort of oppositionist. It's a terrific critique of Main Street or Republican or conservative thought. It reins it in. It tries to keep it from straying into too much support of the big government, etc. But as a governing philosophy, I say this over again, and every time I say it, I get a bucket full of email. I think it's unrealistic to think that in any way he'd either win the nomination or the presidency. Now, I would say one thing, the intensity of his support and the broadening of it over, say, the last 4 years or perhaps 8 years, indicates to me that, and the content of that ad that we just talked about, attacking Republicans and Democrats, indicates that to me there's a fairly good chance that if he doesn't get the attention or respect or support he thinks he deserves in the nominating process, he could run as an independent and he would be a tremendously important factor in that case.
Which would cause problems for Republicans.
Absolutely. It could cost them the election.
Bill, let's turn to Texas Governor Rick Perry and his comments about the Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke.
Real
He
quick,
didn't mention Bernanke by
Ron
name.
Paul to
He
Rick
said it was almost
Perry.
treasonous if he continues to print money in this economic
No, pues,
environment.
wow.
But what about that comment?
Nothing new
and the
there,
reaction
huh?
to it across the media and here in the Beltway?
It was a stupid comment in the sense of calling Ben Bernanke treasonous or almost treasonous.
I can't make fun of Ben
That's
Bernanke.
ridiculous. Actually, criticizing Fed
Can't make fun of Ben Bernanke.
Substantively correct in my view, and politically a winner. I would actually say the Republicans need to broaden their economic message to deal with monetary policy, not just to be the party that worries about the fiscal side, about the budget. But I don't think Rick Perry should give a substantive critique of Fed's policy and not say that Ben Bernanke is almost treasonous. Having said that, generally Perry's had a very strong launch. You've got to say he's a very good retail candidate. Underestimated people.
Retail.
Perry is like Bill Clinton, I would say, in his ability to connect with audiences and with individual voters, to deflect criticism. But he says some foolish things, and the question is, if he can curb the saying of the foolish things, he could be a pretty formidable candidate.
In fact, talking about a good launch, Rasmussen has a new poll out. It's likely GOP voters, 1,000 of them. And you take a look at this poll, the margin between first and second is significant, Kirsten. 29% for Perry.
Yeah. Well, the question here is this just because he's the flavor of the moment?
Yeah, well, because you gave him all the fucking coverage. You gave him all the fucking coverage, and he's in the front.
With John Kerry, he jumped right to the front. He was the front of Time and Newsweek, and then he fizzled out. So the question is, Perry, is he going to what Bill is saying, is he going to be able to be disciplined, not doing too much shoot from the hip stuff that alienates people? Though you have to remember the stuff he's saying right now actually isn't alienating the base. It's just going to maybe make people concerned about him as a general election candidate.
Charles.
I think we saw an example of this jumping ahead of the pack early, even more recently, earlier this year when Donald Trump for a weekend or so was #1, and then he faded.
Because he was all over the news because he had fucking coverage.
Position to be in. He's ahead. He has the potential of staying ahead. But I agree with my colleagues here. He has to be real careful. Using the word
you better
treason
obey.
is something that you
Go with the status quo.
Campaign. You don't do it in public life unless you're dealing with something that you can support and something serious. This is not a word ought to be bandied about, and his use of it is kind of a colloquial sort of ingratiating himself with his audience, which led him to do it, I think, is something he has to be really careful about.
What's striking about that Rasmussen poll is Perry has been running 1 week and he's at 29%.
Yeah, because he got all the coverage, pendeja.
Who I don't know that much about Rick Perry. They like, hey, he's a conservative governor of Texas who's been successful, who's created jobs. They like the idea of Rick Perry. And look,
where did they get that idea? Where the fuck did they get that idea from?
Candidate. What struck me about the poll also is Romney's at 18. That's pretty much where he's been. Not sure, 60.
Okay,
Perry's
well,
29 and not sure 16. 45% of the people answering the poll are
because they're fucking confused.
Or not.
They're fucking confused.
Well,
they think that what they see on TV is news.
Congressman Paul Ryan actively considering, according to Steve Hayes at the Weekly Standard, and a couple of other people have mentioned this. It's not just the hope that you perhaps brought to the panel previously, but that it's actually a consideration.
I bring hope. Steve Hayes brings reporting. It's a division of labor at the Weekly Standard.
You think it's real?
I think it's 50-50 that Paul Ryan runs. I think we'll know in a couple of weeks. I think if he gets in, he'll be formidable. He's the leading he's the leading Republican member of Congress. He has articulated the Republican agenda nationally in a way that no one else has over the last year. I hope he runs, because I would like to have the option of considering him, at least, when I vote in the Virginia Republican primary if he wants.
The media often gets accused of looking for the next shiny thing to go after, but it seems like there might be substance to this.
Well, what this poll says is that there is dissatisfaction among Republicans, so it's not just the media. Republicans are looking for something else. And so he is an attractive candidate in a lot of ways, but he cuts against the idea, the main criticism of Obama, which was he didn't have executive experience, and look what happened. So he doesn't have executive experience, and he also doesn't have experience running a national campaign. Those are, don't underestimate that.
Just fucking get into water down everything, Lato.
Substance. He offered a plan that would cut $6 trillion out of our budget. It's a real plan with real numbers, real ideas. I think when Bill looked at the poll and saw, was it 16% not sure? He read it at 16% Paul Ryan.
Next up, the president's bus tour.